Hello and welcome to the Unbundled Attorney Mastermind podcast. My name is Dave Aarons and I'm the founder and CEO of Unbundled Attorney. In this podcast, we interview our unbundled attorneys, as well as the leading experts in the industry, to identify the best practices for converting leads into paying clients and how to ethically and profitably deliver unbundled legal services and other affordable options in your practice. To learn more about how our exclusive unbundled leads can help you grow your practice, visit our website at unbundledattorney.com.
Hi, everyone. Wanted to go ahead and welcome you to this Unbundled Attorney Fireside Chat. My name is Jack Dolance, and I'm a dedicated support attorney here at Unbundled. And as you can see, we have a guest today, which is attorney Steve McGuckin. He's from New Jersey. And we're going to do an interview today, a Fireside Chat, which is, of course, it's a more of an intimate style interview. I'm going to be talking to Steve and going over a few themes that we've discussed previously in the email that we sent out. And after that, you guys are going to have a chance to do a question and answer session with us. So hopefully we'll be able to answer any questions that you have. But before we get started, I wanted to just introduce myself briefly and Steve. So again, my name is Jack Dolance. I've been practicing law since 2014, primarily doing felony criminal defense and serious personal injury cases in the state of West Virginia. And then for the past 2 years, I've been working as a dedicated support attorney here at Unbundled Attorney. And now I'm fortunate enough to live in the beautiful mountains of Medellin, Colombia. So I'm a little bit further south than I was. And then our guest today is, again, Mr. Steve McGuckin. He has been practicing also for about 10 years. He was also admitted in 2014. And Steve owns his criminal defense firm in Middletown, New Jersey. And he's also a great father and a husband. And he has a few children, including the most recent arrival, which is a big, beautiful baby that he showed me the other day, named Albert. So one thing I wanted to say about Steve is one thing that gives him a very unique perspective, and one of the reasons that he's a guest with us today is that he actually worked alongside of us here at Unbundled. He worked as a dedicated support attorney himself for about a year before going back into private practice the summer of 2024. So Steve, welcome. It's good to have you.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah. So, all right, I guess before we get started, just to give everybody here a quick introduction. Our goal today for this Fireside Chat, once again, we're gonna have a chat, then we're gonna have questions and answers at the end. But our goal today is really just to have an honest and meaningful conversation with Steve, with our guest, and then of course we're gonna do our best to try to give every one of you on this call some specific tools and also some inspiration to be able to grow and build your own practices, and for you to be able to walk away from this knowing that you can do this too. All right. So to everyone listening right now, just know that, this is a community event. This is designed for everybody on this call. And Unbundled Attorney has 500 plus attorneys across the country. But for everybody who's been with us for a while, it's a small community type deal. And that's the whole idea behind these Fireside Chats as well, is that nobody's alone in this. So once again, you're going to have a chance to ask questions at the end. We'll have a live question and answer section. But I also wanted to ask everybody to just go, if you have questions while we're going through this interview, write them down. And in fact, if you feel like, feel free to go ahead and drop your questions in the Zoom chat at the bottom as we go along. So with that, Steve, again, welcome you here. It's always good to see you, man. I love being around you. You always have great energy, and you're the type of person that just goes for it. You don't make excuses, and you just get after it. So you have an energy about you that's very contagious, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on today.
Well, I appreciate you saying that.
Absolutely, man. All right. So Steve, you're up in New Jersey. You got back in the game last summer, and I know you won't say this because you don't want to brag, but you're killing it right now. I can tell you, everybody on our team here is extremely happy for you. We're cheering you on. And I guess my first question to you would be just, how has it been for you getting back in the game, putting the suit back on? You got the tie looking good today. How's it feel? How's it been?
Well, first of all, I do see some of my old colleagues up in the bar, so I just want to say hi to you guys. I miss you all. It was a pleasure to work with you, and it's awesome to see your faces. Jack, obviously, I see a little bit more of you since you're my dedicated sport attorney, and you've been a big help. It's been excellent. It never felt completely right leaving my practice. It was always in the back of my mind. I had left due to some financial duress and was looking for some other opportunities. And it was really as a result of working with Unbundled Attorney that I was able to kind of get a sense of, where did I go wrong possibly when I had my own practice. I started my own practice in about 2016. Things went pretty south during the COVID era, especially criminal defense attorney. I'm criminal and DUI. I found that in New Jersey, that socioeconomic bracket wasn't really getting into much trouble because they couldn't move around. And then even when they did, maybe they weren't hiring a private attorney at that time. Everybody kind of got slammed, which kind of led me to Unbundled. But now that I'm back in it, I mean, really, it's been excellent. It's been a wonderful experience. No complaints.
Good to hear that. So one thing I wanted to ask you is, to get started is just tell us about, I know you told me that you just told us that I guess during COVID is when you had that transition to come to us, to come to Unbundled and work for us, and you were with us for about a year. But then, how did working at Unbundled, how did it shift your mindset and the way that you thought about the practice of law, and take it one step at a time? When you first started with us, what was your mindset as you began, helping other attorneys as a dedicated support attorney? What was the shift in your mindset? What was that like?
Yeah, great question. And I think to answer that, I'm going to go back a little bit further, just to when I first started out. So I got right into criminal and DUI with a fairly large criminal DUI firm on the Jersey Shore, and the boss there, the head partner, he really was kind of one of those early adopters of figuring out how to rank on Google. So he was great at his own SEO. Part of that job was writing pages, writing blogs, and then going to court, running all over the place. So if you go back to 2016, that was part of when I went on my own. I thought, maybe I could scrap a little bit of market share and use some of those practices. Over time, Google, I know a lot of attorneys here know how it works, but Google would change the algorithms, get a little bit more nuanced, more sophisticated, and the big dogs were kind of able to put a lot more money into the website. And I was really focusing on, if not referrals, organic search. And at some point, I hit a wall because I'm not an SEO expert. I'm an attorney, and here I'm spending all this time spinning these wheels, which was ripe for COVID to kind of come in and sort of polish me off at that point in time, right? Because I didn't have that know-how. I hadn't really diversified or anything like that. And so that's sort of where I was left at the time. So let's fast forward to Unbundled, which was an excellent experience. And I think one of the major factors was, when you have a mix of attorneys, dedicated support lawyers who work with attorneys, and you see attorneys and what they're going through every day, and you combine those folks with real thoughtful guys with regard to sales and building businesses and things like that. What it really did was open my eyes to where I went wrong in a few specific areas. So I was really able to kind of, and then I would see, by being a dedicated support attorney myself, I would see some attorneys who shared some of my faults, who I would see, okay, this is why you're not doing great here. I could understand. And then I would see other attorneys who would kind of elevate me, and I would see a little bit of myself in them. I'm talking to you, Alex Schmolsky. The guy is killing it. And I thought, I think I could do that. So
I didn't know you know Alex. I work with Alex now, and yeah, he's a great guy, and he is killing it. Just talked to him earlier this week, and he's absolutely crushing. That's cool. You guys know each other.
I thank you both very much for your support. You guys are incredible, and I'll sit here quietly.
Good to see you, man. Okay, so you started to see. You said that you identified some things that you had done wrong in your own practice, and you also saw some things that you could do right. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
Like, so you saw yourself, in the good and the bad.
Right.
All right. So, give us a couple examples. Go ahead and just tell us a couple examples of some things you saw, good and bad.
Absolutely. Okay. So, from your seat, from the dedicated support attorney seat to me, and I don't know if the other DSLs will agree quite as much. I think a lot of them are a lot kinder, more genteel. Most are from the South. But it's very clear as to who is going to pick it up right away, who probably won't and may not succeed. And then there were also the folks who were at least open-minded enough to kind of come around to maybe changing their ways a little bit. And it was, like I said, when I say it's clear, it's clear. Sort of a profile of somebody who would not be good is somebody who's very used to doing things a certain way. So take me, for example, it was organic SEO. I'm gonna try to write pages. I'm gonna try to backlink. I'm gonna try to write blogs that people want to read, which nobody cares about a Jamesburg DUI. Like nobody's looking at, right? Also, I think a profile of somebody who's maybe is not quite as positioned to succeed within the program, maybe a little more bristly, a little more sensitive, maybe a little more expectant of, I would get, for example, lines like, well, I'll pay for leads that convert. Well, who the hell wouldn't, right? So,
right.
So that someone who's maybe expecting a little bit more, maybe doesn't have that, not ready to be interested enough in the potential leads, enough in the clients to be interesting to the potential lead, to the potential client.
You say the attorney was not willing to be interested in the client and treat them as an individual, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So there's a phrase I came across fairly recently. In order to be interesting, you have to be interested. And some attorneys who I think meet the profile of maybe not ready to succeed within this program lack that interest in the program, interest in the difference in how we approach the payment plans, interest in how we approach the enrollment conversation. Just sort of, there's got to be a level of interest in doing something different in order to actually succeed at doing something different. So I think that would be kind of the profile of someone who may not be situated to thrive here. Profile of somebody who is situated to thrive. And this is not just one personality type either. There's definitely an array of personality types. Some I found more like me, but there are people who are quieter, people who come off probably more sincere, people who, whatever. And also there's different practice areas as well. But just an interest in the program, in our enrollment conversations, when we would go through our own PowerPoint presentation, they're asking questions. They're saying, wow, I never thought of it that way before. And you could just tell this person, if they just tweak a couple things, they could fly. And I saw that time and time again. So it was very, like I said, very stark.
So maybe a little bit more of open-mindedness and like you said, interest, just having an interest in learning and trying to improve and a willingness to give it a shot.
Absolutely. And I'll give you one of the biggest examples. If you ask me why, as a young attorney who had just hung up my own shingle, why, for example, on a DUI, I mean, everyone's a little bit different, and I know we'll get into this later, but let's say a DUI, first offense DUI, my fee is right around $4,500. Why am I, as a young attorney, saying, if you don't pay me half up front, half in 30 days, I'm not taking the case? It's like, what the hell is that? Right? Who am I to say that? Whereas if, hey, you know what? We go in for a quarter or a third. I see you have a good job. We can set you up on a payment plan. I'm still going to get paid, and I'm not. There was an open mindedness, and I just did it because, well, that's the way my old boss did it, and that's the way everybody does it. That's one of those. That's one of those open minded aspects that when you actually see it, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that a lot of us, and I guess we could, maybe you and I can maybe say this still, that younger attorneys. I feel like when I said we've both been practicing for 10 years, I felt kind of old saying that, but we're still relatively younger. But I think that many of us, we were taught how to practice law by mentors who were great mentors, wonderful people, wonderful lawyers, judges, but a lot of them had white hair and they've been doing things the same way for, probably 40 years. And,
Right.
and as a younger attorney, I think I had the tendency, I'm not sure about you, but I had the tendency to sort of just accept that as gospel. This is what this guy's been practicing for 40 years. He must be right. And so, when somebody like that told me, as a criminal defense attorney, you don't want to take payments. Just don't do it. I listened to him and I didn't accept payments. I think I took payments from like two of my private clients in 8 years. And one of the things that I can share is after working here and seeing the amount of money that the attorneys were making, the ones that I was, working with, doing the consulting work with, the ones that were taking payments, the amount of money they were making by taking payments, I was just thinking to myself, like, how many clients did I pass up when I had my firm? How many people did I say no to because they couldn't pay the full fee up front?
Right.
And honestly, I have very, very few regrets about anything I've ever done in private practice. That's one of the biggest regrets I have, is that I said no to so many people because they couldn't pay the full fee up front. And why did I do that? Because, an older attorney told me that's the way to do it. So,
Right.
yeah.
Which is so counterintuitive, because you could have been talking to a nurse or a teacher, somebody who has a solid job. And by the way, in that enrollment conversation, that just leads to a better conversation anyway, right? What do you do? No other attorneys are asking them what they do. Oh, how long have you been doing that for? It's not just, what do you do? Can you pay me? Oh, cool. Oh, you're a teacher. Great. And so again, it kind of leads to that, building that quick relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's building rapport, building connection, a genuine connection. It's not bullshit. It's not BS. It's a real connection you're building with that person. Somebody's a teacher, my brother's a teacher. Okay. Now you've got another point of rapport with that person. And like you said, you're not doing that just to ask them for money. You're actually finding out about them. And when they call you up, I think that's one thing that, one thing that my colleague Alexis says that I really love is that she always says that she always reminds the other attorneys that we work with, this may be your 10,000th consult that you've done with a client, but it's very likely their first or their second.
Right.
So, if you jump into it with the approach that, I'm going to speed through the thing, get the money right away, not going to ask them any questions about what they do, what their life's like, think of that from the client's perspective. How's that come across to you? That means that attorney doesn't give a crap about it, basically.
Exactly. So it's that. And then the second part of that is removing the financial pressure, stress from that conversation. So, when they need an attorney, they're already going through something that they probably haven't gone through before, a criminal offense. And even if they had, it's still a highly stressful life experience they're in. So first, you're creating that personal relationship quickly. But the second thing is you're removing the financial stress immediately. When you say, you know what, I'm willing to work with you based on when you get paid. There's been times where I've heard an audible sigh of relief on that. Wow, no one's doing it. So I think that's another factor here.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things that we talk about when we talk about the enrollment process, the unbundled business model, is to make a compelling offer. And part of what makes an offer compelling is it's something that perhaps they've never heard from anybody else before. They haven't heard from any other attorney before. And you want to make, this is of course, this is after building rapport, making connection with them. Once you make that offer, after building that rapport, taking those steps to do that, your offer should be so unique and so different that that person does not feel the need to talk to 5 other attorneys.
Exactly.
They already like you. You as the attorney are interesting because you're interested in them. You've built a connection, you've built a bridge. And then, if you tell them that, like you said, there's no financial pressure, they don't have to pay everything right now, that you can work with them. what reason do they have to talk to somebody else at that point?
Exactly.
And
That's what I find.
yeah. So how's that worked for you? I mean, that approach, how's that worked since going back into private practice?
Yeah, so it's been working out. I was trying to get a sense of my exact percentage, but I'm right around a third. There's ebbs and flows as with everything, and sometimes I'll hit a hot streak. Out of every 10, I'm probably hitting between 3 and 4 on average, and that's going extremely well for me.
Yeah, I mean, so that's extremely good. I know the first couple of months we were meeting, you're right, you were hovering right about 51%. Yeah, and I kept on going. We kept on meeting. We have another meeting 2 weeks later, a month later, and I was thinking to myself, "There's no way he's going to be at that level." And I would be like, "You 50%?" You'd be like, "I'm 51%, 49%." So
yeah,
I think, and I have no doubt that you're going to stay around that level. But in other words, the strategies that you've learned, the things that we teach in Unbundled, those have they've translated from theory into practice.
Correct.
And you've seen empirically that it's effective. Absolutely. Okay. So I wanted to ask a little bit about that, walk into that a little bit more. So, I guess I shouldn't assume I think that's the danger of this conversation. You and I both know this so well. I don't want to skip over anything. So one thing I want to move back a little bit. So obviously, Unbundled, we're doing the marketing for you, for every attorney that's with us, and we're sending you prospects, potential leads. What would you say is the first key to success converting the leads? So you get notified of a new lead, and you get the email, the text alert, or else you get a live phone call. What's the first key to converting them?
Good question. And right before I answer that, just want to say how I don't want to take for granted the fact that, there are leads, right? So part of the reason that I closed up shop is because the phone just stopped ringing, because it was so much. It was so difficult to try to keep that organic search going. And there would be days, and then days would turn into weeks where it'd be just a couple bad calls. So to have these leads constantly coming in is just a beautiful thing, without having to do any legwork to get them. I believe it's the same as what we taught. I think being incredibly prompt, prioritizing the fact that your business runs on your ability to bring in leads. And if you don't mind, if I could back up even slightly more, that was one of the biggest takeaways that I got from my experience at Unbundled Attorney, because I think we as lawyers lose sight of the fact that we're operating a business. And I don't know if you had any questions that were poised to this, but I'm just going to kind of jump into that. So
no, go ahead.
Yeah. So actually, there was a book recommended by Dave. It was the E-Myth for attorneys, and one of the lines in that was, too often when attorneys endeavor to go out on their own, there it is, they end up just becoming employees of a bad boss or a poorly run law firm, because we don't think like a business. We don't think like a CEO often. Some attorneys are quite adept at that, but my experience, most are not. We don't learn about it in law school. We don't learn how to open up a practice, and we're lacking sort of an array of that skill set. So, not to digress too much, but when it comes to the leads, to really treat those leads like the gold that they are, because that's what's keeping your business running. After that, it's your reputation, your results, your success. But so being prompt and like a golden egg, right? That's something that you have to get to, and you have to take care of, and then hopefully grow it.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's a great book. It's a wonderful book. I think somebody posted it in the chat. If not, I'll show it one more time. It's highly recommend this book if you guys haven't read it yet. I don't get paid to say this. I don't get any kind of thing from this guy that wrote this book, but it's a wonderful book. absolutely recommend everybody on the call to read it because, as Steve is alluding to, many of us as attorneys, we are, we all have a certain level of intelligence to get to this level in our lives, professionally. But being a good attorney does not necessarily mean you're good at running a business. And that book is absolutely the perfect explanation, the best explanation I've seen about how to bridge the gap between the two things. And to realize that when you have a law firm, you're absolutely doing both of those things at the same time. And if you're not, it doesn't matter how good of an attorney you're going to be self-handicapping and limit the amount of successes you have if you're not treating it that way. So that's a great recommendation. I appreciate that, Steve. And then as far as the jumping to hop back for a minute to what I was referring to, that to be successful converting these leads, the first step that I don't want to skip over is you mentioned that you have to be prompt when the lead comes in.
Yes.
So how prompt are you talking about?
We have so typically I receive the lead from via text is the best for me. That's the best way I receive it. When I get the text, if I can, I immediately go into the app, look up what's going on with that person. And if I have even 2 or 3 minutes, I'll call them. And, if I have time, it's the first thing I do. It takes absolute priority all the time. And it's me. I don't have, I have a colleague who I work with. I have some office support. I call them, right? I want to be the one to speak with them. If I have the time, it's the first thing I do. If I only have a couple of minutes or I could step away, I will, and I'll say, hey, listen, my name's Steve McGuckin. I'm following up on your legal inquiry. When are you free to speak? And I try to make the voice contact, the voice to voice. Mm-hmm. If I can't, if I'm otherwise engaged, I send a text message immediately. I have a generic message saved to notes, and I follow the instructions that we provide in the PowerPoint. I'm going to be calling you back from this number in a couple of minutes, or if I'm engaged, it's will you be free sometime after this time? I will be following up with you, something along those lines.
Right. So there's a couple things that I wanted to unpack there. The first thing that you said that I think is really important is that you said that when you receive a lead, that's your priority, and that you are the one that calls them back.
Yes.
So, and you're the one that answers the phone. So one thing I don't think we mentioned is that you have the pro plan as well. So you have the live transfers coming in when it comes in. So how important is it to answer those live transfers if it comes in, as opposed to waiting?
It's very important.
Okay. And why is that?
Just because I equate it to if you're running Google AdWords and somebody calls your office while they're going through the list and they're looking up all the other people, when they call you, that's your opportunity and you can lose it.
Mm-hmm. I guess, yeah, I think one thing that I don't know if you and I have ever talked about this before, but the way that I visualize the live transfers is, if you can imagine there's a hallway with 10 doorways, 10 doors, and a client, they're all attorneys, different law firms, and a client knocks on your door, and you might be in the middle of writing an appellate brief, but there's a client that knocks on your door who has, a $10,000 case, $5,000 case. You might be busy writing your brief, but if you don't answer that knock, do you think the client's going to stand there at your door and wait, or do you think they're going to call somebody else, or they're going to go knock on the next
moving
door?
along? Absolutely. In fact, so something that happens quite often is I'll get the notification and I call them and I miss them because they're calling me on the live transfer. That's how quickly I try to hit them. There is that gap, as some of you folks probably know, but yeah, again, it's what keeps the business running.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely key. It's key for any practice area. And I see some of the attorneys I work with, I see Chris, you do bankruptcy, but Chris, how many times have I told you how important it is to be rapid on your response? Because, as we're talking about, if you don't answer that call, they're not going to sit around and wait for you because they have some urgency and they want to talk to somebody that's going to be able to solve their problem. And it's important in every practice area, but I would say it is by far the most important in criminal and DUI, because they're calling you with an extremely urgent matter. that, essentially their house is burning down and they need to know, are you the person that can put out this fire? And if you don't answer the phone, that's a no. You're not the guy. So they're going to call somebody else that can do it. So I think I don't want to beat a dead horse with that, but I tell everybody I work with that is absolutely the foundation to all of this. You have to be quick with that. So I know you do a great job of that, but I just wanted to make sure that we didn't skip over that because it's such an important foundation of it. And then so then the next thing is once you have them on the phone, that's when you're going to do what you talked about when you want to build a bridge. You want to build connection with them, ask them what they do for a living, or something like that, just to build a bit of rapport. And it's also, another reason that that's so important is because when you find out what they do for a living, you're getting an idea, a bit of a picture into what their financial situation looks like. And maybe they have a very good income. I think you would attest to this, that people that come through Unbundled, some people are doing not so well financially. Some people are middle class, some people are upper middle class. And then I've seen some people that have a lot of money that they just happen to go to the Unbundled website and they call an attorney and they pay a fat retainer and they pay it all up front. So I think
we all know it runs the gamut. I mean, it just does.
100%. I mean, and so I don't know if you have experienced this yet, but I can't look at all the people on the call right now, but one of the attorneys I work with in Philly, he had 2 murder cases come through Unbundled in the same week, which I don't think when I started here that I would have ever anticipated a murder case coming through Unbundled Attorney, but he got 2 in 1 week. There's also there was an international espionage case that came through Unbundled. So, I mean, and then there's also run-of-the-mill theft charges, or DUIs, whatever. So there's really the run, but you don't know, and you might miss it if you don't answer the phone quickly. So it goes back to that again.
Absolutely.
And then as far as the offer goes, once you build that report, you have to make them an offer that's better than anything else they've heard or that they're going to hear. So tell us a little bit about, what kind of a deposit, what kind of fees are you charging typically? You can give us 1 or 2 examples of the types of cases and what type of fees you're charging, and then what kind of deposit are you asking for up front?
Sure. So excuse me. So fortunately for me, the majority of the calls fall within my skill set, comfort level. And, so we're talking, New Jersey we don't call them misdemeanors, felonies. They're disorderly persons offenses and indictable offenses. They operate the same way. So for misdemeanor level charge, I charge somewhere in the $2,000 to $2,500 range, unless there's some complications or a serious jacket. For sort of a lower level felony charge, we're probably talking somewhere between $4,000, $6,000, depending on the factors involved there. A first offense DWI is at about $4,500, and then it would escalate with a second offense or again other complications or aggravating factors. That said, I typically will, my deposits will typically be somewhere in the range of, to get in on the lower end, somewhere around $750. We're probably somewhere north of 25% into 35%, and then about $1,500 to get in on the higher level matters. Could go down to $1,000 again. And again, I'll try to feel out what that person does, and a lot will depend on what they're comfortable paying biweekly when they get paid. So that's sort of the range.
Okay, and so to know when they get paid, obviously you have to ask them that question,
right,
as well. So is that something that happens on almost every phone call when you ask them what they do?
Yes.
And you ask them. Okay,
absolutely. So a couple things that always happen. One I'll say is, oh man, I'm sorry that happened. That's one thing that then oh man, I know it sucks. And then I get into who they are. What do you do? Sometimes get into what their family situation is, and then I let them. I will actually lead with, my fees may be similar to some of the other fees you've heard, if because I'll ask them if they've been calling around as well. But I do offer, what I believe are more flexible payment arrangements than some of my colleagues. And so then when I let them know what that payment arrangement is, a lot of times I'll hear them say, "Wow, yeah, that's unique, that's new." So that's so I do lead with. I try to educate them on the fact that not everyone, or if you plan on calling around after me, most attorneys are going to ask for give me 4,500 up front. Whereas Dave would say, give me 4,500 or get the F out of my face. I mean, and it's kind of true. So I'll educate them on the fact that this payment plan is a little bit different. And, I'm more than happy to work with them on what they make and when they get paid.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a good way to, I guess that goes back to you building rapport, but at the same time you're building rapport, you're also getting some actionable intelligence that's going to help you decide what kind of a deposit you're going to require up front, and also what kind of payment structure financing you can go with moving forward. So it's a very important question to ask. I think that is not something that I used to ask. So again, that's something different that I think is a lot of lawyers miss out on that. But it sounds like, so you're saying essentially what I'm hearing is that the entry point, if a client wants to hire Steve McGuckin as their attorney, they're not going to have to come up with $5,000 up front. It's more along the lines of 750, 1,000, 1,500, somewhere in that range. Is that fair?
It is, and one thing that it does open up, and I should mention this, is that because I lead with that, it does open up. The clients say, well, if I could pay up front, would you shave some money off? And I typically do. I say, sure. And I'll cut, if they say it, I'll cut $250, $300 off the top, just as part of the cost of doing business and getting that amount in. So that's just another thing I think I should add.
Yeah, that's a great incentive that I've heard of other attorneys that have done very well with this. They've said the same thing, that they will just add a little bit of incentive like that, when they first make that offer. And I guess that's another thing I wanted to mention, is that, do you find that I think one thing a little bit of pushback I get sometimes is I will sometimes hear, well, I don't want to sound cheap. I don't want the client to think I'm a cheap attorney. And my response to that is usually, do you think it's going to scare somebody away that you're making a good offer? Or do you think that it's actually going to open the door to more clients? In other words, if you have a lower barrier to entry, so that you're accessible to more people, do you think that's going to make the people with more money walk away?
I don't really buy the argument,
I don't either.
I don't buy that, because all you're showing is that you're reasonable. All you're showing is that you value the money of your clients. We're getting paid no matter what, right? You set them up on a payment plan, you're going to get paid the amount of money within the scope of the representation, because we all have an idea of how long a case is going to take to complete. So just think about going and buying anything or any good or any service. We utilize payment plans all the time. I mean, I can't wait to get to a place where I don't anymore, but it's so common. So why not just lead with reasonableness? And then when a client says something along the lines of, "Oh no, I appreciate that, but I don't need that payment plan. I'm happy to pay up front." Great.
Exactly.
But they're not, payment plans, I'm going elsewhere. It doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen at all. That's the thing. I think it might have been Alex that I saw somebody drop a comment that said, "Rich people love a reasonable deal." And I think that's a great quote. That's the idea, though, that you're not going to turn. Rich people are not, and people with money, they're going to pay you. You can say, well, we can start it for 20, 25% down. If they have a ton of money, they're going to say, well, I appreciate that, but I'll just go ahead and pay the full thing today.
Yeah.
There you go. You got your money. But the converse is not true. If you say that you have to pay everything up front, the people with money, they'll pay that. But the people that, they might be a nurse or a firefighter, somebody that has a good job, but they might have a few kids and they don't have a ton of discretionary income, so they can't pay a few $1,000s up front, but they have regular paychecks coming in.
Right.
If you make that payment off, that lower initial deposit offer to them, now you have a good client that's going to pay you on time when they get paid. 100%. And the rich people, the people with money, are going to pay you the full thing anyways. But if you say that they have to pay, like you said, pay $5,000 or get out of my face, the people that don't have that money, you've just lost that client. So,
and one thing to add is, when that person has a regular paycheck and they've hired you, you now have a regular paycheck. And I cannot stress how lovely it is, how wonderful it is when you've been on a little bit of a roll with this program and suddenly Friday comes along and $2,500 drops into your account just because it's Friday. You didn't do any work for it. It's just, and it happens and it grows and it's over and over and over. It really, I mean, so that does a few things. One is it pumps you up, it keeps morale up. The other thing is that it offsets slower weeks. You know, we're all, like I said, things ebb and flow. We all know this. So when money is just coming in and you're able to see that, it keeps you going, right? And it's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. That's anybody who's been a solo practitioner or is a solo practitioner right now, that I'm sure that resonates with them because, you know, it's often such an ebb and flow where you might have 2 months where you don't make much, or you might not make anything for a couple of months. But if you can have some kind of consistency where money's coming in from several clients that, like you said, every Friday or every couple of weeks, whatever, that can help you so much in running a small business. That you know, it's something that goes back to that E-Myth book, you know, about the running a business, right, not just running a practice. Right. That's something that a lot of us miss. We just think about getting clients and getting big cases, but we don't think about how to have consistent cash flow coming in. So that's an absolute key for that. So one thing I wanted to talk about real quickly in terms of getting that deposit is whenever you have somebody that's interested and you've made a good offer and they're ready to move forward, how do you actually get the deposit? Do you send them a payment link or do you process the deposit over the phone?
All right. So honest to God, I have not sent one payment link. I don't even know how to do it. I take the card payment over the phone. I plug it into LawPay. I'll set up the automatic recurring payment in LawPay. I thank them warmly and we get to work. I mean, that's how I do it, how we operate.
Okay. So you use LawPay. You said that pretty quickly, but you use LawPay to set up the automated recurring payments. So
right,
that would be
thank you. We look forward to helping you out. You know, once I say, okay, how would you like to move forward? Would you like to get started? These are the steps to get started. Once you've retained me, I'll send in our letter of representation. I'll let the court know we're on the case. We'll enter a plea of not guilty. We'll request a discovery, all that. But in order to get started, you know, I do have to be retained. So I could take a card payment over the phone. Very easy. It's not scary. And I take the card payment down and we get rocking.
I think that's a key point that many attorneys have a little bit of reticence to actually ask for a card over the phone. I've heard people say, I don't want to seem like a used car salesman, or I don't want to be pushy. But you tell us. I mean, what's the exact phrasing that you use once you reach that point? Do you know, is there like a certain sentence to use? You know, like, okay, so the next thing we need to do is we can take credit cards, debit cards. How do you phrase that?
Yeah. So typically, I want to make sure a lot of it can depend on the conversation, but generally speaking, in order for me to get started on this case, I do have to be retained. That means that we have to take down a deposit. I can take a card payment over the phone. And then they say, okay. And then, I mean, that's really it.
Yeah.
So it's, and that's after a good conversation. And then sometimes, you know, if they're still waffling or they're thinking about it, I try to get a set follow-up. You know, okay, so, you know, I understand if you want to think about it, or you have to talk to your wife or your husband. You know, when would you like to reconnect? How does this time work? And then we'll set that up.
So you give them a specific date and time. You don't just say, call me back when you're ready. I think
but I'm going to be, if I don't hear, and I'll say, by the way, if I don't hear from you by around then, I'll be reaching back out to you. Is that okay? Because I know none of us want to sound pushy, but again, these are people who are waving around money, hoping that somebody will take their case and get them out of trouble. So it's not weird to ask them to pay you. Think about anytime we go and buy anything. We don't want them to be squeamish about taking our payment. They want to give us the good of the service for the money.
Right. I think most people understand that. They understand that it's you know, if they're going to hire you, that involves paying you some money. So I think it's just a pretty common sense. And then the other thing I tell people is that, you know that when you're talking to this client, you know that you're a good attorney, you know you're going to do a good job for them. So I don't understand, honestly, the there's no reason to be shy about it because you're making them a good offer. You're working with them. You're gonna work with them with their budget, and but you have to put food on the table for your family as well. So that's just that's the way this works, and
Right.
it's just people are not put off by that. Clients are not put off by that. Is one thing I would say. So, all right, one thing I wanted to move on to is the next thing is we've already talked about prompt contact. We've talked about making a compelling offer with lowering the barrier to entry, making a better offer than what your competition is going to make. And then the third final step, what we were just talking about just now, is immediate enrollment. So you have to have the systems in place. You said you use LawPay. I love LawPay. Some people use Clio. Some people use MyCase. There's a bunch of different options out there. But one thing I just wanted to emphasize is the key is that to be able to do the payment plans and to run this business model the way that we recommend, the way we've seen it work well, the payments, they do have to be automated and recurring.
Yes.
And the reason for that, as you know, Steve, is that you don't want to be calling clients up and requesting payments every Friday. You want to see the payment come through. Like you said, Friday comes around and you see your bank account and you get a notification. You just got $2,500, you got $500, $750. That was deposited automatically into your account. That's right. A key because 20 years ago that wasn't possible.
No.
20 years ago, back when you and I were in high school, the lawyers that were practicing, they couldn't do that because they had to send out an invoice, or they had to have their secretary give them tasks, call this person and get the payment. And a lot of times they wouldn't answer the phone, or they'd say, well, I'll call you back, blah, blah, blah.
It's a nightmare. Kind of like SEO. It reminds me of the organic SEO days. Hey, Bob, you're supposed to, oh yeah, no, I'll get that to you later. I mean, you're already putting yourself in a tenuous situation because the heat of the moment from when they first retained you is gone, where they're really willing to pay. And now they know that you're on the books, and they know they'll probably get around to it at some point. Here it's, hey, Bob, I noticed, and it happens sometimes, not as often as the fear is when I would speak to attorneys as a dedicated support lawyer. That's what happens. Hey, Bob, I noticed that your payment didn't go through today. It was scheduled for today. Is everything okay? Would you like me to retry it? Oh yeah, I got paid. Let me switch some money over. I mean, that happens way more. I keep them on the phone and they're able to, or if there is some hardship, we're already used to dealing with that because we've been calling them anyway. So, but it doesn't happen quite as often, and I find it to be very successful. The ARP.
Okay. All right. One thing I would be very remiss if I did not mention this, if we didn't discuss this, but the title of this podcast, or this interview that we're doing today, is "Burn the Boats." So I wanted to ask you, and that came from a conversation that you and I had a while back, and I wanted you to just explain that to our audience, tell them what that is, and why it's meaningful, why it connects with your journey as an attorney.
Absolutely. So around the time that I was working for Unbundled Attorney and realizing that this could be a great opportunity, at first kind of thinking that maybe I'd missed this opportunity, right? I wish I had done this back when I had my firm. I was inspired by a few factors, by a few things. So one was just the model, my colleagues, the positive support that we gave attorneys. I was inspired by our attorneys, whether for better or worse. Hey, I could see why this person's not doing well. I would do it way better. Or this person's great. I could be just like him or her. So that was one, just the unbundled experience. Number two was the E-myth for attorneys, kind of put in words what I was feeling. Hadn't been running the practice like a business. Maybe I should start. And then three was another book that just sort of, I don't even know how it came on my radar. It's called Burn the Boats by Matt Higgins. He was a guest shark, pretty famous guy. And
on Shark Tank is what you're talking about.
On Shark Tank. And he and the whole gist of that is find your core competency, eliminate what's getting in the way of it, and then go put yourself in a position where you have to succeed. I mean, that's essentially what, and the genesis of Burn the Boats, it goes back to Cortez coming to the New World, and they burned all their boats, that they would have to succeed where they were placed. And that's with my wife's support. I mean, that's what we were able to do. I mean, we just, and Unbundled, which gave me the impetus and in a lot of ways, the motivation and tools to be able to succeed happen to also be a boat. So I had to burn it and I jumped back into private practice. And so that was a very important book for me at the time.
Yeah. So essentially the idea of that is, like you're saying, is it goes back to Hernan Cortez when he came to Mexico, or to the New World, and discovered this place. And there were these Aztecs there, and they knew they were going to have a fight on their hands. And he wanted to make sure that his men knew that there was no turning back.
That's right.
We succeed or we die. That's it.
Right.
Right. So he literally told them to burn the boats, so that there was no escape. There was no excuse. There was no turning back. It was victory or nothing. And exactly. I love that message. And I think that translates so well to business. That I love that you picked up on that. So I think that's the reason why we wanted to go with that as the title of this conversation today. So you knew that you had to get out of your comfort zone, and you knew when you did it. Like I said, that's one of the reasons I like being with you. I like talking with you. Is you have this energy about you that you just go for it, right? And there is no turning back. There's no turning around. You're going forward, and that's it. Right. So I love that, and I feel like I hope everybody, if they don't read that book, take that message and run with that, because that is, I think, key to running a business. And again, running a practice is not enough. You have to run a business as well, and that's the way to do it. It's just to, if you want to follow your dreams, you got to go for it 100%, not 95%.
Absolutely. Well, 100%.
Yeah. So okay. What else would I wanted to ask you? So one thing, you use LawPay. As far as other technology you use, like what else do you have, like a case management software like Clio or LawPay, or do you use anything like that?
I'm on the cusp now. So this is, we've spoken about a lot of the good stuff that's come from this experience. As the cases have come in and I've become busier and busier, I realize I've been a little bit slow to the punch when it comes to systemizing and outsourcing. Even though I started off thinking, let's operate more like a business, I'm right now hitting that point of mass, of critical mass, to where I'm having a more difficult time thinking strategically, and it's because I didn't do those things earlier. So right now I'm backtracking a little bit. So I made the same mistake that I, as a dedicated spoiler lawyer, I'd say to maybe a lot of you guys, you're making this mistake. Well, I've definitely made it. And now so I'm finding myself a little bit behind the 8 ball with regard to having all these cases, not having any other kind of software. I mean, essentially it's, I use Calendly to set up appointments, LawPay, but it's time to get some real case management software.
Like a CRM. So like my case or Clio or,
yep.
Okay. Yeah. Our Practice Panther is another one that a lot of people use that they love.
And I'm all ears for what works, but especially for UI, but that's So that's certainly a learning opportunity, right? So I probably should have jumped on a little bit sooner, but have to get in on it.
You and I we can talk about that next time we have our next one-on-one meeting. But just so everybody, while we have everybody on the call, I can speak from my personal experience. I don't get paid by Clio, but I used Clio for 8 years. It was a great tool, and it's improved tremendously. The attorneys I work with, they teach me things all the time. They show me things that Clio does, and I'm like, holy crap, that's pretty powerful in terms of automation, and now it's implementing aspects of AI to just make our lives easier. So we can talk about that later, but Clio is a great one to check into if you haven't looked into it yet. And I've never used Practice Panther or MyCase, but I've heard great things about both of those as well. So anybody who's interested in that, I would look at Clio, Practice Panther, and MyCase. And also with Unbundled, we also have integrations with that. We have integrations with Clio and with MyCase. So the way that works is when you get a new lead that comes in through Unbundled, it's automatically going to integrate it's going to auto-populate their information into your system for you, so that you don't have to manually enter in the client's information, their contact information, their case information. It's already there for you. You already have a matter that's set up for you, which once you get a lot of cases, a lot of clients coming in, that's going to save you a little bit of time each client, which when you're a busy attorney, going to court every day, that's going to make a difference. So I would just encourage anybody who hasn't done that to look into that. One other quick thing I wanted to ask you about is in terms of being busy, that's obviously a good problem to have, but how have you addressed that problem so far? Like, I know, well, I'm asking this, but I know the answer. Like, you hired, I believe you hired an of-counsel attorney. Okay. So tell us a little bit about how that process worked. How'd you find that person? What's the arrangement look like? Do you pay them a part of the flat fee, a percentage of it, or what's it look like? Just give us a little bit of insight.
Yeah. So we're quite flexible, and it seems to be working out now. So I'm very fortunate to find him. He actually started out at the same firm that I had left about 10 years ago. He has gone out on his own, and he's looking for business, and he's sharp. I mean, I think he's going to be, he already is. I mean, he's a certified criminal trial attorney. It's about, like I said, about 10 years younger than me. He's going to be probably a better attorney. So I'm very, very fortunate for who I have right now, especially at this point in his career. The way it works is use him either on a per diem basis. So, I'll pay him for appearances on sort of lower matters, more misdemeanor type matters. Mm-hmm. And then, but what kind of keeps the relationship going is that I told him that I expanded counties that I was not as familiar with, where he had spent quite a bit of time. And then I will share fees from larger cases in those counties. And it just seems to be it just works. He's getting paid, I'm getting the help I need, and also kind of staying out of that, traveling to counties that, like I said, a little bit further away, that I wasn't quite as familiar with the judges and the prosecutors there anyway.
Yeah. And it works out from his perspective too, because he doesn't have to go hunt down clients, right?
Right.
Like you're handing him the client and letting him run with it from there. When he doesn't have to worry about marketing, he doesn't have to worry about the enrollment. Like that's all taken care of. So I think that's one way that it works out for both sides. It's a very fair agreement for both sides, is that they get a smaller, oftentimes most attorneys I work with, for criminal cases, they'll usually, usually might be a little bit different, but usually they'll pay their of counsel like 1/3 of the flat fee, and you will keep 2/3 of it. But of course, you're the one that's paying the marketing costs, doing the enrollment process, and it's your reputation, your firm's reputation on the line. And they are just they get work consistently, and they're getting paid consistently. So it's a good deal for both sides, and they're getting, and if it's a younger attorney, especially, they're getting some very valuable experience along the way. So that's, and it's also, if it works out well and you want to hire them full time as an associate, you can do that. But if not, they can go their separate ways, and it's a very clean, workable relationship for both sides.
Absolutely. And we just try to keep communication wide open. And it, like I said, so far, it's just had a nice, that's been a great experience. Having an automatic colleague, a lot of us as pure solos, it gets a little lonely even. I mean, you have colleagues, that maybe run their own practices, but they don't always want to be talking about your cases. Just like you don't really always want to be talking about theirs. So when you actually have somebody who's that goes a long way. It really does. So it's just been a good thing and quite mutually beneficial.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think that's a great thing. And the other thing that it does, and another conversation that I want to have with you as we're moving forward, is once we get some other things in place, is how other attorneys have done this, and I want to help you do it if you're ready for it. If you want to do it, is how to expand your reach into other parts of the state, because obviously, as a criminal defense attorney myself, you can't be in court in one county on the east side of the state and be in court on the west side of the state in the same day. It doesn't work logistically. But you can accept cases from both sides of the state and make money from cases from all counties in the state through having of-counsel relationships with different people in different parts of the state. That's something we can get to later on, but it's the same blueprint, and you just use it to expand and grow. And some attorneys do it in multiple states. Wade Gertz in Texas. He's now doing cases in Georgia and New Jersey and New York, and we're talking about other states as well. And obviously, he's one man with two hands, 24 hours. He can't do all that himself, but through of-counsel, that makes that possible. So it's a really, Yeah, yeah. He's great. He's great. He's a great guy too. So one thing I wanted to get to before we get to questions from people that are attending is this is this is a question that you and I haven't talked about before, but I think it's a really it's an incredibly important question, and I think it's gonna resonate with people that are listening to this, whether they're listening right now or listening in the future on YouTube or on Spotify or whatever. But I just wanted to ask you, Steve, how do you imagine, or how do you envision your practice in the next within 5 years, so 2030? What's your law firm going to look like?
Great question. So ideally, I have a goal of relocating full time to South Carolina. I'm going to be taking the South Carolina bar in July. I live near a good domestic airport, but I would love to be in a position to where I have help wherever needed. Right now, I believe in about 20 to 25% of the counties in New Jersey. So that's it. I mean, so still starting off pretty measured, scaled, but I would like to go all of New Jersey, have it somewhat self-sustaining, come up when needed, and then have all of South Carolina as well, and go from there.
Okay.
And see where that reach goes. But I'd like to start off with South Carolina after New Jersey.
I'm assuming that's with criminal defense and DUI, or are you looking at different practice?
Good question. Yes. So there's the two different ways you can go, right? You could either stay where you are and expand practice areas or expand geography. Want to stick with core competency now. This is all you mentioned. I like to go for it, but the change into new practice areas is an area where I could use big confidence boost. Have to speak with some other attorneys in those areas before I have the comfort level to really bring in somebody and know I'm going to do a good job for them. So that's a conversation for you and I to have. But I stand geographically first, and then add the practice areas based on our success within criminal and DUI. Take that to good to great. Be great at one thing before you're good at a bunch.
I'm with you 100% on that. But I guess my follow-up question to that would be, before you worked at Unbundled, before you were working with lead generation and having these leads sent to you, is that kind of that's a pretty expansive vision that you just laid out, that vision of having a practice in multiple states, you having your family and having your practice in 2 states, having help in different states. Did you have any kind of vision like that previous to working at Unbundled?
I thought so much. It was, I thought in a exponentially smaller way. It was looking at my old boss and hoping I could peel off a little bit of his market share in the counties that I wanted, the 3 counties that I wanted to work in. It is much different. And again, it's because I was thinking like a youngish attorney that'll be just lucky to get these cases in. If I could just get a little bit of here, instead of thinking, okay, I'm a business and what's my business plan? But like I said, I definitely need the support to get there because I certainly don't have all the answers from the business perspective. But again, it's a much broader point of view and it's achievable.
Absolutely. That's kind of what I was getting at, is that, when I had my firm in my practice, that's not something that I didn't know anybody who'd done that. I wasn't exposed to that. Now I work with multiple attorneys that have practices in multiple states, and they're just like you or I or anybody on this call. Like anybody can do that. There's a way to do it. You have to do it step by step. You have to have the systems in place, and you have to have a business model in place, and you have to stick with your business model. You have to be consistent with it, but it's absolutely achievable. And that's something that I think a lot of lawyers, they do think in a very limited mindset. So I think that's something that I hope is inspiring to everybody that's listening to this. Like I said, either today or in the future, that's something that any one of us can do. And I'm trying to think how to say this so it doesn't sound like I don't want it to sound like a commercial, but it's it's such a valuable thing to have, like that an unbundled attorney offers, to have one-on-one support for you or for anybody else who works with us, that we can help you. I mean, everybody I work with, I try to ask them at some point or another to try to envision, get really clear about your vision, get clear about the design. What do you want to see happen? And you can literally design your own future where you want to go. And also you can know that you have a community behind you. You have your dedicated support attorney. You have an entire team that is going to help you with hiring process, with business consulting, with the actual enrollment process. And we're all here to support you. Like I hope I don't hope, I know this, that I want to see you kick ass and just dominate. I want to see you do well. That gets me up. That's what gets me fired up, and about this job, is helping people that I work with, helping them write the next chapter of their professional lives, which also affects their personal lives, it affects their families' lives. Get to see people go on vacations for the first time in years and grow their business. That is amazing to see. And to see that you don't have to go it alone, even if you're a solo. That, when I was a solo, I felt, even though I had mentors, I kind of felt that I was on my own. Like, nobody really cared about my business other than me. They were my friends, they're my colleagues, but they don't really care about my business growing. But this is an opportunity to have somebody that genuinely does, that we're invested in you and want to see you do well. So
100%. Just if I could just speak to that.
Yeah.
I'm not being paid to say this, but the eclectic, incredible group at Unbundled. I mean, you have people with all different sorts of accents from all over the world. I mean, what a supportive atmosphere, open-mindedness, where we as attorneys maybe can become a little bit closed-minded or set in our ways. That really was a great experience for me. I appreciate it, all of you guys. Great deal. And with regard to vacations, that we haven't gone a while, we haven't been on a vacation in years, and we just booked Iceland with the family over Easter. So we're very excited about that.
There you go. That's I love to hear that. So I think that's a good way to actually, that's a good way to wrap it up right there, I think, for right now. And I want to open it up because I see that it's 4:11 Eastern time. So why don't we go ahead and open it up? Anybody who has any questions for Steve or for myself, feel free to fire away.
I did notice, hi there, Alexis James, dedicated support attorney here. I did notice a number of questions. They all kind of revolved around the same thing in the chat. And it was basically how to make sure people pay and keeping up on those payments, even with the automatic recurring payments. So just maybe some tips, guides for making sure those payments happen and how to time it to make sure you get paid before a case is done.
Yep. Steve, you want to take the first crack?
Yeah. So good question. Like I mentioned before, sometimes that payment doesn't go through. It's rare. So I've been fortunate there. So couple little tips there. You could get a feel from a client when you think maybe they're biting off more than they can chew. So don't be afraid to go lower if they're able to bring up that initial deposit amount. When you find out what they do for a living, or just from the feel. Again, and maybe this is a little bit different with criminal defense versus some other areas of law, but I don't know. So I'm not afraid to go, that 250 number is a nice one for a lot of people. If you saw my recurring payments, most of them are bi-weekly between 250 and probably 400. When somebody says, oh, I could pay 750 or I could pay whatever that is, if they say, oh, well, you know what? Why don't we do this? If you could put a little bit more down, let's lower that amount. And then maybe they'll need a little bit of time to go over that. But hope could be a dangerous thing here where you take only a little bit and you don't think they're really going to be able to come up with it. So hammer in on what they do. I never ask people what they make, but I do try to get as good of an understanding of what they do and as realistic of an idea. The only time I got really burned was one of my very first clients that I picked up. And looking back in that conversation, I think there were enough warning signs that I was just a bit naive. And since then, it's been pretty buttoned up. The other thing is that sometimes with the automatic recurring payment, day of isn't necessarily the best thing because people get paid, the payments are withdrawn early in the morning and maybe they get paid a little bit later. So you want to find that out, okay, well, if I set up the payment for that day, those payments are taken out early, would it be better to do it the following day? So those are two, I think, common sense tips. I think it's an occupational hazard and part of the cost of doing business as well.
Yeah. And one thing I think those are both great pieces of advice. One thing I would add is I think Alexis, you mentioned that somebody was talking about making sure that the case is paid within the time frame of the case. So one thing that I try to tell people is that nobody knows your jurisdiction and your judges and how long different types of cases take better than you do. So you practice in New Jersey, in certain counties in New Jersey. I'm sure certain counties, one county might be more of a fast timeline than another. At least that was like for me. I mean, certain judges they would not let the grass grow underneath their feet, and then other judges, they would have continuance after continuance after continuance. And that this case is going to take a year. Other ones, this case is going to take 4 months. So that's one thing you have to keep in mind is where it's located and which judge it's in front of. And then with that information in hand, when you're first having the consultation with the client, you need to figure out, as Steve was just saying, figure out, you can be a little bit flexible about payments, maybe lower the payments if they can pay a higher deposit, or a lower deposit if it's a case that's going to take a long time. Maybe the deposit can be a little bit lower and spread it out over time, as long as they have a job or some kind of income coming in that they can support that. But I always recommend that people try to have the payments complete, that their balance is paid off roughly 1 month before you anticipate the case is going to be resolved. So if you get a new client today, January 9th, and you think this case is going to be resolved, by mid-August, I would do the math and figure out how to make the payments, how to have the balance paid off by the middle of July. That way you have a 1 month buffer. I'd never, ever recommend a payment schedule that ends later than the end of the case, because I represented criminal clients for years. Some of my criminal clients I'm still in touch with. They've done great things for their life. I love them. They're amazing. Other ones, I wouldn't necessarily trust them after the case is done. They might disappear. They're changed phone numbers. They might never see them again. So you have to protect yourself. Even if you like the person, you have to be a smart business person, and try to structure it so that that the balance is going to be paid off about a month before the case is resolved. So whoever asked that question, or if you need follow-up to that, feel free to ask, but hopefully that answers it a little bit. And then Alex, I see that your hand is raised. Alex, are you still there? I don't see you, but I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, I'm here. Hi, guys. This is Alex. I just want to add two things, since you guys both have helped me out, that you said to me, and maybe you can touch on them. One is, Steve had said to me originally about taking payments after the case is resolved. One of the major things is, if you do an outstanding job on this case, these clients are really indebted to you and they want to pay you, and that's kind of offsets some of the risk, because you're their man now, you're their guy, you take care of them. And then the other point, and I'll let you both talk about it, is, Jack, you explained this to me the other day, is that if I'm doing a DWI case and I resolved 3 of them this week on the first appearance, but I took $1,500 down on $3,500 payment plans, and it only took me a couple of hours. So that $1,500 is certainly going to cover my time. And then that extra, $2,000, if it comes in, is bonus money.
That's an excellent point. Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
No, please, I cut you off.
No, I was going to say that's an excellent point that Alex and I had that conversation the other day. Is to be able to know that, you'd have to know, what's your hourly rate, and also you have to know how many actual attorney hours are you going to have to put into this case, depending on the complexity of the case. If you know that it's going to be a pretty routine drug case that is first offense. It's going to be a plea deal. You're going to have to review discovery, have a client consult, a couple conversations with the prosecutor. You can pretty much have a pretty good idea of how many hours you're actually going to spend on that case, and then you know what your hourly rate is. So from there, you can make a calculation on what if I get paid this X amount for deposit, and this guy makes 2 payments, and then we enter a plea a month and a half, 2 months from now. If I make that money, I'm making a profit. And then if he happens to be a very honest criminal or accused criminal and pays me after that, that's just icing on the cake. So that's something that I do recommend to everybody is to have an honest assessment, of your own, the hours that you're going to have to put into the case, and then determine what makes sense financially based on that. And Steve, feel free to add to that.
Yeah. If there's a fairness component, although we do know what we're worth, I would with the DUI, and I would rarely resolve one on the first offense. I try to be a really good attorney, but just kidding. No, but what you said is absolutely true. Sometimes you get in there, you do a bang up job, you got the prosecutor on a good day, you got some good facts, and the prosecutor, and you're able to work it out. You've already covered yourself for the one appearance. And maybe if you had known it was going to be one appearance and out, you would have charged something a little bit different anyway. A lot of times a person will still pay you because you did a great job. And like you said, you're their guy. Now you got their friends, you got their subsequent offenses if they happen.
Yeah, you said that pretty quickly, Steve, but I don't want to gloss over that. You're not only their guy, but you're also the family attorney now if their brother-in-law gets arrested for something, or their cousin gets arrested for something, one of their good friends gets arrested, odds are they don't have somebody that they routinely call on. And if you do a good job for them and you're honest with them and treat them like a human being, just treat them well, and get a good deal for them, like that's an evergreen. That's an evergreen arrangement you have going on. You're going to have clients coming to you for years. And for somebody like me that did, I not only did criminal law, but I did a lot of PI work as well. You're not only going to get referrals for criminal cases, but Aunt Jenny got rear-ended by a truck the other day, and now Aunt Jenny she's in the hospital and she needs an attorney. Guess who they're going to call? They're going to call you, not somebody else. So it really makes sense in several aspects to be fair and to work with people on payment. Yeah, and by the way, I just wanted to say, thank you everyone for being here today. I hope this was helpful for you. That's why we're doing this, is for everybody that's on this call. And thank you, Steve, sincerely, for taking time out of your day. Like I said, you're a very inspirational person. We love to see you do well. Everybody on this team is very happy for you, and we look forward to being with you, in the next chapter.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I love seeing my old colleagues up there. Good luck to everybody. This is an excellent supportive community. And I did see that Christine did just ask a question about the most important takeaway from the experience working as a dedicated sport attorney. Kind of touched it a little bit, but I think it's a good way to end, would be just thinking about our business from the business side of our business, from our client's perspective, rather than our own. I mean, when you have businesses are always thinking about how do we reach our potential customers and our potential clients, and that's what Unbundled does when it comes to us, right? Us as attorneys, and what are they going through? What are they thinking? And that's what we need to do with our potential clients. What do they need to hear? What do they need from us? Because before that, I was way more self-centered as a younger attorney without even knowing it. What are you going to be able to pay me? What kind of case is this? And just kind of get on the way. So I think just being a little bit more interested, a little bit more open-minded, and way more business-oriented. So that's it.
That's a good way to wrap it up. All right. I'm really proud of you, brother. Thank you again for coming here today. And thank you for everybody on the call.
See you. Take care, everybody. Happy New Year.
Hey, Steve.
Happy New Year.
For more information about how our exclusive Unbundled leads can help you grow your practice, visit our website at unbundledattorney.com. You can watch each new episode of the podcast on the Unbundled Attorney YouTube channel Or if you prefer to listen, you can find us on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. And be sure to subscribe so you get each new episode as soon as it's available. And remember to leave us your review on iTunes. We read each and every one of them and really appreciate your support of the show. Once again, thanks for listening.